Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today, and today we're going to be going over some potential cut candidates for the Houston Texans' third and final preseason game. We're going to be talking about 5 players on the offense and the defense of both sides of the ball. 5 players on each side that definitely could be cut by the Houston Texans, and the guys you should be looking out for tonight, trying to make the 53-man roster. Let's go over it. I think this game tonight for the Houston Texans is going to be a very fun game to watch. This is a loaded roster where there's going to be a lot of guys, in my opinion, that get cut out of the 37 player out of the 37 players that get cut, cutting the roster down from 90 to 53. The 37 of those cuts, there's going to be quite a bit of players that could have and maybe should have made the 53-man roster. Now, let's go over some players I have on the offense and defensive side of the ball that should be interesting to watch for tonight, seeing if some of these players can maybe potentially fight to keep their jobs alive. And let's start with the offense. And first, we got to start with the tight end position. That's Brevin Jordan and Tegan Quantanaro. I think Brevin Jordan, if I'm correct, is questionable from this game. So I think I feel like going into this roster cuts for the Texans, I think there's a really good chance the Texans will cut one of Tegan Quantanaro or Brevin Jordan, 2 tight ends they've selected. And the 2 past couple of drafts, Tegan Quantanaro was drafted in the 7th round in 2022, had a really solid rookie year. Brevin Jordan was in 2021, I believe, the 5th or 4th round. And now Brevin Jordan's been hurt a lot throughout training camp and preseason. Tegan Quantanaro's been hurt himself, a fair amount of training camp and preseason himself, but he's healthy now. He's been back for maybe over a week now. Played last week against the Miami Dolphins. I think he even had 1 reception as well. I think who has the edge if one of these guys is going to get cut when it comes to Tegan Quantanaro or Brevin Jordan? I think Tegan Quantanaro has to be favored over Brevin Jordan. I'd like the Texans to keep both of these guys just in case the Texans have some injuries to that tight end position. I think it'd be good to have 3 tight ends on the roster, but we'll see what happens. All right, another play on the offensive side of the ball that will be interesting to watch tonight will be Dare Ungabalawe, the running back. He probably won't not make the 53-man roster just because you have Pierce, Singletary, Mike Boone, but you've kind of seen a kind of a position battle for that third-string running back between Mike Boone and Dare Ungabalawe throughout the whole training camp and preseason. But Mike Boone has kind of had Dare's number, but Dare's going to have a really good game for the Houston Texans today if he wants to, keep his job with the Houston Texans. And then 2 wide receivers I have. I know that these guys will not make the roster, but Jalen Camp and Johnny Johnson III, those are 2 guys I think it should be really interesting to watch in dump time, like 3rd and 4th quarter of tonight's game, because those are 2 guys right there who would definitely not make the 53-man roster. But the next day after you cut the roster down from 90 to 53, you put it back up to 69 when you have to pick up 16 players for the Houston Texans practice squad. So I think Johnny Johnson and Jalen Camp, who have been a part of the practice squad for the Texans the last couple years, have came up to play for the Texans in the regular season a couple times. I think those are 2 good guys right there if they continue to have some success for the Texans in the preseason, which they haven't really been doing. They've been okay. If they can have a solid game tonight, I would say it's pretty much fair that they will probably make the Houston Texans practice squad. And then getting to the defensive side of the ball, 5 players that I think could make the 53-man roster but need to have a good game tonight. Starting with Shaq Griffin at the cornerback position. We've seen him do solid for the Texans in training. Preseason, hasn't been that great. He's been okay. Training camp has been really solid. Has been better in training camp than he's been in preseason. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Shaq Griffin does in this final preseason game for the Houston Texans. And then another guy that I really like that we signed from New England, Chase Winovich, a defensive lineman and plays special teams. I mean, I think he's gonna have to do some solid things, whether it's on special teams or it's on defense today for the Houston Texans, for the Texans to potentially have him make the 53-man roster. And then we have a group of, one more defensive lineman, Kurt Heinisch. I think he's a guy who definitely has had a solid training camp in preseason and played a little bit for the Texans last year during the regular season. I think he's a guy that definitely could make this roster, but he's not to have a solid game. He's been playing in the preseason quite a bit. He's been playing pretty decent in the preseason. But if he's going to make the 53-man roster, which honestly I think he's another one of those guys that could maybe make the practice squad if he gets cut, I think the Houston Texans most likely, you need to see him have a good game today if he's going to make the 53-man roster. And then you have a pair of linebackers. It's Jake Hansen and Garrett Wallow. I'm really excited to see what Garrett Wallow would do. We drafted him in 2021. I think it was either the third or fourth round we drafted Garrett Wallow, and that was in 2021. He's looked good in special teams, started to play a little bit more on defense last season, but this linebacker core is better than it was last season. Not only that, Garrett Wallow is going to have a good game if he's going to make the Houston Texans roster. I think he's a guy that's in a lot of danger to be cut by the Houston Texans on that Tuesday deadline, to potentially make the 53-man roster. So, I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what happens with that. But, I mean, yeah, so use your thoughts on, the potential roster cuts for the Texans. Let me know who you're interested in watching tonight in tonight's game against the New Orleans Saints at 7 o'clock. I mean, those are the guys I'm going to be looking at that are fighting to make roster spots. Brevin Jordan, Tingin Quantanaro, even though Brevin Jordan might not play. Dare Ungabalawe, Jalen Camp, and Johnny Johnson on the offensive side of the ball. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Shaq Griffin, Chase Winovich, Jake Hansen, Garrett Wallow, and Kurt Heinisch. Use your thoughts on the potential players that I have to potentially be cut, and use your thoughts on this last preseason game for the Houston Texans. I'm excited to see what C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson do in this final game. It's on Fox. I'm just really excited in general for the Houston Texans to play today. And that's it for the video, and peace out.